Hello, everybody, and welcome to your weekly Squibbler Wednesday webinar. Today, we're going to talk about visual storytelling. This is for our screenwriters or for people who are interested in screenwriting. And we're going to talk about writing that leaps off the page and onto the screen. This is kind of an addendum to the couple of first few webinars that we've done for screenwriting. So this is just a little bit more in depth about how to write for the screen as well. So you are going to learn the difference between writing for a camera and writing for a reader. We'll talk about how you can write visual characters and things to avoid in writing strong visual scripts. So what is the difference between a script that gets optioned and one that's going to sit in a drawer that nobody will ever see on a screen? The difference is going to come down to immediacy, visceral reaction, and visual impact. Scripts that get optioned can make readers feel like they're watching a movie while reading, whereas drawer scripts feel like they're just reading about a movie. There's a big difference. Option scripts are going to grab you by the third page, and they create an immediate, almost physical reaction in the reader. We're compelled to keep reading. They show a unique world instantly, so that even familiar settings feel fresh through specific, unexpected details. Characters are going to leap off the page. You can see the actors, hear their voices, and see their mannerisms. You'll also get visual momentum in these scripts. Every scene is going to propel forward with cinematic energy. These option scripts are also emotionally accessible. They have complex themes delivered through simple and powerful imagery. On the other side, there's the drawer scripts, and this is the problem with some of the ones that do not ever see their way to the screen. Drawer scripts take longer to get going, usually about 20 pages, and by then, most readers have mentally checked out. They use generic descriptions like he walks into a room, and that could describe any character in any movie. The characters often feel like plot devices. They serve the story instead of driving it. Drawer scripts are also exposition heavy. Characters explain things instead of revealing through action. There's nothing technically wrong with drawer scripts. A lot of the times they're formatted correctly. They may be intellectually sound, but they are emotionally flat. The good ideas are poorly executed. So here's a test about what you've written. If you handed your script to someone who's never heard your pitch, would they immediately understand the tone, the genre, and stakes just from reading the first few pages? Option scripts are going to pass this test. They're self-contained experiences that sell themselves. So here's the industry reality too. Readers at production companies and agents often decide within the first 10 to 15 pages whether or not they're going to keep reading. Scripts that get optioned are going to hook them immediately with vivid, specific storytelling that makes the movie feel inevitable and necessary. Technical competence is not enough. Proper formatting and solid structure are just your foot into the door. What gets scripts optioned is the indefinable quality that makes readers think, I have to see this on film. I want to see this movie made. Notice in that sentence, I have to see this made. You have the verb infinitive to see. For readers who are truly appreciating your screenplay, they need to be able to visualize what you've written. So visualizing and seeing what's happening in your text is extremely important in screenplays. Writing for the camera is quite different from writing for a reader of a novel. With texts and novels, we can read about a character's internal thoughts and emotions. We can get in depth on those. But on film, this has to be conveyed through things we can see or hear. So speech or visual elements. This means that every line in your script should be visible or audible. Most screenwriters write like novelists when they first begin. They describe thoughts, they give backstories and abstract thoughts. But screenplay readers, like agents, producers, coverage readers, need to see your movie. They don't need to understand it intellectually. They're essentially pre-visualizing your film as they read your screenplay. So writing for the camera is quite different from writing for a reader. With text, we can read about a character's internal thoughts and emotions, but on film, we have to see this through speech and visual elements. This means that every line in your text should be visual, audible, it should paint a picture, and every sentence should create a specific filmable image. So here are some examples of do's and don'ts when it comes to writing for the camera. You want to write what the camera sees, not what you, the writer, knows. So with a sentence like, Sarah is devastated by her husband's betrayal, That's nothing. There's nothing in that sentence that's going to give us a clue about how we know this on film. If you read the next sentence, Sarah stares at her divorce papers, her coffee mug trembling in her grip. Now we know that things are wrong. We know that she's, possibly going through a divorce and that she's upset. We don't need the text to tell us this. Another example is you want to use specific filmable details. So instead of writing, "This house looks expensive," how do we know? We have to put that in visual terms. Things like marble countertops reflect crystal chandeliers. There's not a fingerprint anywhere. Gives us an idea that this is a well-to-do household. You also want to lead in with a visual hook. So something bland like it's the interior of a coffee shop, it's daytime, it's busy and annoying and noisy is so generic. Think about the sounds that you would hear at these places and the things that you see. So in the rewrite, take a listen. Steam hisses. Espresso machines shriek. Sarah shouts her order over the chaos. So this is all things that we can see on film. You also want to have action lines as shot lists. So instead of "they argue about money," we need to know what the director is going to have the film crew film. So when you have "they argue about money," we don't quite know how that's going to look. But when Tom slams the credit card bills on the table and Sarah's eyes widen, this is filmable. This is something that the director and the film crew can discuss that they can film. You also want to be very careful to make sure that your character's behavior is reflecting what's going on internally with them. So instead of saying something like Detective Martinez is meticulous and observant, you need to show this to the reader of your screenplay. Detective Martinez straightens the crooked picture frame before examining the crime scene. This tells us a little deep detail about his personality. There is a huge professional impact when you focus on writing visually as well, because several things can happen. Your reader is going to be able to read faster, and that's really, really crucial for busy executives and producers. They're going to remember your script if there are visual elements that stick out to them. They can also pitch it effectively to their bosses. Directors and actors can immediately see their roles in it when you've written for what they're going to be doing or directing on the screen. So here's another test for you. If someone read your action scenes out loud, would a film crew shoot the scene solely based on that description? Would they be able to? And if not, you're going to be writing a novel and not a screenplay. There shouldn't be interior characters' thoughts and so forth. So think about yourself as the filmmaker. This may help you, where words and every single line is a camera angle, and every detail is a deliberate choice about what the audience is going to see and when they're going to see it. So we are going to talk about one of the strategies for making sure that you are writing visually, and that is show versus tell. This is a very common theme for for books, for screenplays, and so forth. And we do have another full webinar on this topic, but I'm going to at least kind of cover the fundamentals for film here. There is a difference between what is amateur writing and professional screenwriting when it comes to showing and telling. And again, instead of describing what characters feel, you need to make sure that you are revealing their emotions through what they are doing. You want to create moments that actors can play and audiences can experience viscerally. So some of the advantages of using this method is for actors with showing and not telling. This is going to give them specific playable objectives instead of vague emotional states. So if I say someone's sad, the actor doesn't really have much to go on. Whereas if I'm instructing that they, reach for a card from their recently deceased mother and they start crying, that's filmable and visual for them. For directors, showing versus telling also provides visual storytelling for opportunities rather than exposition to cut around. And for audiences, these moments are going to create discovery moments that actively engage them in the story that you're telling. So emotions that you describe on the page are invisible on the screen, as we've just said, and actors need playable actions. So it's really important to make sure that you're thinking not just like a filmmaker, but as an actor as well. So some ways to do this, showing, not telling. One way with conveying emotions is to show anger through action. So instead of something like Mark is furious about being fired, Think about what people do when they're really angry. You can have things like Mark methodically places his office supplies in a box, stapler, slam, pen holder, slam, his coffee mug. He pauses, then hurls it against a wall. These are all filmable acts. You can also do this with love. Instead of Jenny adores her grandmother, you can show this. Jenny cuts her sandwich into triangles automatically the way grandma taught her, even though she's eating alone. You can also show grief this way. Instead of Lisa mourns her brother's death, you need to make sure this is a filmable moment. Lisa meticulously makes 2 cups of coffee, then stares at the extra mug for a long beat before pouring it down the sink because she's been used to creating 2 cups of coffee. Dialogue is also extremely important when it comes to visual aspects of film. So you want to have dialogue that shows instead of tells. So instead of having a character say, I'm nervous, I'm sad, I'm angry, they need to have dialogue that reflects that behavior. So for this example, I'm really nervous about this presentation. Consider revising it. Did I already ask you about the projector? I feel like I asked you about the projector. You know, this repetitive over-speaking is a sign of anxiety and nervousness. There are some advanced visual strategies for film as well. You can use props as emotional extensions. So these are things to consider writing into your scenes. For example, if a character is anxious, they might fidget with their wedding ring. They might tap a pen or their foot or adjust and readjust the rear view mirror of their car. If a character is confident, they might claim the biggest chair, maintain eye contact while other people look away, spread out on the subway, that sort of thing. For characters being deceptive, they might organize papers while they're lying, clean glasses obsessively during an interrogation. That's something that you'll see pretty frequently in detective shows. With advanced visual strategies as well, you can consider the environment and the setting that you're creating here. So if a character is in a messy apartment, this could be a reflection of their inner turmoil, but it should be a specific mess, like pizza boxes versus art supplies, because those are going to tell 2 different stories. You might have a character who straightens people's crooked picture frames, as we had in the earlier example with Detective Martinez. There's a need for control. You could have people who sit facing a door. These are hypervigilant or paranoid people as well. So consider your environment and where those characters are going to fit in with that environment. One thing that I always find very interesting with film and with human beings in general are physical and emotional contradictions. So these are some tips that you can do to achieve that for visual strategies as well. You might have a character say, I'm fine, while they're gripping their steering wheel. Someone might claim to be over their ex-boyfriend or girlfriend while still wearing the engagement ring on a chain. They might say that they're not superstitious while carefully avoiding sidewalk cracks. These are all contradictions that make us human. They are visual strategies, and they also make our characters interesting. So here's a way to test your writing again. If you removed all of your dialogue from a scene, would the audience still understand what each character is feeling based purely on their actions? That's visual storytelling mastery. If there is no dialogue in a scene and I can tell that someone is anxious, stressed, angry, that's really, really well done visual writing. Remember that in cinema, behavior is character. What people are going to do when they think no one is watching reveals who they truly are. And that's a lot more compelling and interesting than any description that you can write about a character. So there are several ways to work on this strategy in Squibbler's AI when you want to limit exposition, which is telling, and focus on the visual, which is showing. One is to make sure you create and define your elements, your characters, your settings, and so forth. For example, if you set up a character as sarcastic, you can have a lot of the text that the AI is going to create for you is going to affect their behavior as well as their dialogue. So some of their mannerisms will be sarcastic. Some of their dialogue will be sarcastic. And you won't have to say that character is sarcastic in your text. You can also use the revise with the rewrite function of show and not tell. So this is going to limit some unnecessary exposition and focus more on the action and observable acts of showing the visual aspects of your screenplay. So we've just taken a look at some foundations for showing and not telling, but it's also, I think, equally as important to talk about characters and how those should be approached when you want visual elements in your screenplays. In screenplays, we learn about characters through their behavior and their dialogue. We really shouldn't learn about them through exposition. So I was thinking about different characters that kind of make an impact on us. And so think about the iconic introduction that we get to Anthony Hopkins' serial killer in The Silence of the Lambs. Hopkins is standing up in his cell as Clarice approaches. It's almost supernatural that he's already standing up and waiting for her. He tracks her with his eyes and he smirks. So without ever having to say a word, he is creepy and intimidating. And it's really interesting to me that Anthony Hopkins won the Oscar, the Best Supporting Actor for this, when he's only on the screen for roughly 3 to 4 minutes. So another example, our introduction to Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight, it also expertly introduces us to character. So the Joker laughs in a slow, unsettling, unhappy, it's not a happy laugh, as he approaches the mob bosses as they're gathering. He promises a magic trick, but then kills the first man to threaten him. We don't need text in this instance telling us he's dangerous and chaotic. His on-screen behavior and dialogue demonstrate it. Both of these introductions to character demonstrate a successful introduction to visual secrets. We get these first impressions through behavior, not description. Clarice responds to Hannibal cautiously, as would we. The mob bosses realize the Joker is dangerous, even to the point of being suicidal. And we do as well. We get that through the visual elements. I just happened to watch Pig again for the second time, a Nicolas Cage movie that came out a couple of years ago. And the first parts of that movie are completely without dialogue. It's just our introduction to the character. And that is all completed visually. So if you want something to watch for how to, create strong visual elements, I would recommend watching the first few moments of the movie Pig with Nicolas Cage. So another thing that characters do is contradict themselves. This is called the power of contradiction, and it's one of the most powerful tools that we can have in screenwriting because it really does mirror human behavior. We rarely say exactly what we mean, and we rarely do exactly what we claim. These contradictions are really good at creating subtext, complexity, and authentic characters that actors will love to play. So we are walking contradictions. We say we're fine when we're falling apart. We claim we don't care about things that really bother us. And we insist we're not hungry while we're raiding the fridge. Characters who align perfectly with their words feel artificial and boring. You don't see that very often in life. So there are several contradiction types that we can aim for and that might help you. And there are some examples for you as well. There's the defensive contradiction. Someone who says, I don't need anyone's help. But when they leave their door unlocked, they're hoping someone's going to check on them. This is going to reveal desperate loneliness and pride. We have the self-deception contradiction. You might have, as we had the example earlier, someone saying, I'm totally over my ex, I don't care about him or her, but then they take the long way to work to avoid driving past their old apartment. So this reveals that they're still deeply affected, but unwilling to admit it. We have the protective contradiction. These are people who say, I hate kids, they're annoying. We see this a lot on film, the curmudgeon who doesn't like children, but then secretly helps students that are struggling through school. And a good example of this would be As Good as It Gets with Jack Nicholson. There's also the status contradiction. Money doesn't matter to me, but this is someone who will check restaurant prices before ordering and reuses tea bags. This is going to reveal financial insecurity. It's something that's visual. You can see it. Despite the brave front, they're struggling. You also have physical versus verbal contradictions. Characters who insist that they're not angry, they're not nervous, these kind of things. But in the meantime, they'll be tapping their foot frantically. They might reorganize their desk as they're talking. They speak faster than usual. They avoid eye contact. So their behaviors, those visual things that we see, are not fitting in with what is coming out of their mouths. And that makes, it adds a layer of complexity to those characters as well. There are also micro-action contradictions. Someone says, I trust you completely, but they're moving their body away. They might claim I'm listening while scrolling through their phone. You see this a lot even in the real world here, not just on film. They might say I'm not upset while they're slamming cabinet doors or stacking papers heavily. There are environmental contradictions. Someone who claims to be a minimalist might live in controlled chaos. People who say they hate drama might sit where they can listen to conversations that are dramatic. People might say they're not sentimental, but they keep greeting cards that they've received. So these are all types of contradictions that are visual elements you can add for your characters in film as well. Here's an example of a character contradiction. And I've written this in screenplay format as well. Some of it, character titles are not centered, but here's an example where Sarah says, "I'm completely fine with Mark dating someone new." She aggressively scrubs an already clean plate. "Good for him, really. I hope she makes him happy." And she's cleaning too hard, so the plate cracks in her grip. This is all things that we can see, we can observe, we can hear her speaking, but what she's saying is incongruous with what she's actually doing. Here's another example. Detective Torres adjusts his tie in the mirror, and he's practicing his confident smile. He's going to say to himself in the mirror, "You got this, total professional." But then he opens his briefcase, and we see backup ties, antacid pills, a rabbit's foot, and details notes on how to project confidence. So we know that he's not true to himself, and we're not getting the full picture of him as well. So some ways to use this contradiction is to layer multiple contradictions. A character might simultaneously say how they feel. That's going to be their verbal lie. They might smile, which is a physical lie. But inside, they might be secretly doing something that is completely telling the truth about what they feel. Like someone who is happy and smiling, but they are deleting social media photos that make them angry. You can also use props. You might have someone who claims to be over someone while they're still wearing their sweater. They might insist that they're not superstitious while they knock on wood. They might say they don't drink anymore, but they're a bartender. So these are all things that you can use setting-wise and props that can also be visual contradictions. You can also escalate things through contradictions. Start with small ones and then build on them. Someone says they're fine with a tight smile. They might insist they're great while stress eating. They could claim they've never been better while crying. So the best contradictions reveal character backstory without exposition. You might have a war veteran who doesn't like loud noises but works in construction, and that tells us everything about their internal struggle without a single flashback. Those noises could trigger them. Remember that characters who say exactly what they mean and do what they say are not characters. These are plot devices. Real characters are beautifully, messily contradictory, just like real people. So some common mistakes if you're aiming for visual elements and good visual writing. You want to make sure you're not over-explaining your character thoughts and feelings. Look at every one of your descriptions about your characters, and if it's too much exposition, try to find ways to show this is how this character behaves or what they're thinking. You want to make sure you don't have static dialogue scenes without any movement. Nothing is going anywhere. And then any generic action lines that could describe any movie, he walks in a room, you want to rewrite those to give some character to, some elements of character to that actor that the actor can work with as well. Some ways to test your characters for visual elegance is to take any scene where you've written the character emotions directly and then say, what would this character do when he or she is feeling this way? What's a surprising or specific way that they might express this emotion? How can I make the audience discover this feeling rather than being told about it? And if you can pass those tests with your characters, you're on your way to good visual writing. So when we post this webinar to our resources library on our Discord server, we will have an exclusive packet for screenwriters to help you master visual writing in your own prose. So in this webinar, we have reviewed writing for a camera versus a reader. We talked about writing good visual characters through contradiction, and we looked at a couple things to avoid in writing strong scripts that will be strong, visually elegant scripts as well. So thank you, as always, for joining us. We appreciate it, and we hope you'll join us next week. Bye, everyone.